Alright, we're going to look at some crazy WebKit box shadow. We're going to mix that with some WebKit keyframe animations. Although the keyframe animations are WebKit, WebKit only, the box shadows we're going to be looking at can all be substituted WebKit for Moz and O for Opera for all these to actually work in those browsers as well. So what we're going to look at is WebKit box shadows. Okay, so in order to make this really stand out, we're going to apply WebKit keyframes, and I'm not really going to go through exactly how to do this because I have the last video on it, so go watch that if you want to learn this step by step. But popped out is the element that when you hover it becomes that element. Ignore that. Okay, great, that means I still have that set, so let me save and refresh. Okay, so this element is the popped out element. Okay, so popped out colon hover, we're going to animation name is pulse, which we're going to create here in a second. We want it to go infinite times, it would be linear and take 1 second. So how do you write this? Well, again, watch the last one, but you do keyframes pulse like that, and then you say I want to have a 0%, I want to have a 50%, and I want to have a 100%. Okay, we're going to have 3 stages. So we want to have WebKit border, so dash WebKit box shadow. Okay, so what is the syntax for box shadow? I'm going to show you this. Okay, so basically you can have shadow, comma, shadow as many times as you want. Okay, you can have as many shadows as you want built up. Okay, so what is a shadow? So let's define one of these. To define one of these, it's basically you have like 6 different options. Okay, the first thing you can have is the word inset, which makes it an inside border instead of the default outset, which is no word at all. Okay, this word does not have to be there. If it's there, it's an inside border. If it's not, it's an outside border. Okay, so I'm going to put that as a question mark because it's an option. It doesn't have to be there. The next thing that you can have is your offset X. Okay, then you can have your offset Y, so XY. Again, these are in pixels. Then you have your blur radius, so blur radius, which doesn't have to be there, so a question mark. Then you can have your spread radius, which again doesn't have to be there. So what's the difference? I'll show you in a second. And then you can have your color, which also doesn't have to be there. Okay? And again, you could have comma, not period, comma, and have a whole other slew of these. Okay? So let's define some of these. We're going to leave inset off for now and just do a regular box shadow. So we're going to do offset X. We're going to do 0 pix. We're going to do, well, you don't. If you're doing 0, you don't need PX. Okay, everything other than 0 needs the PX. So X and Y are both 0, 0, which is going to make it even on all sides. The blur radius, we're going to go ahead and do, let's say 5 pixels. Okay. The spread radius, we're going to leave that default for now, which is not there, and then we're going to add this awesome blue color as the color, just like this. Okay, and that we're going to make that for our 0, our 50, and our 100. So if I save this and look at it, there's no animation because they're the same amongst the whole thing. So let's just look at that for a second, and we get this really light blue effect, okay, around the whole thing. So let's make that pulse and make it a little bit bigger. So we're going to make this 15 blur when you hover over it. Now that's going to blur it by 15 pixels during the pulse. So it's not going to be a stronger pulse, it's just going to be a blurrier pulse. So let's take a look. So you see it's blurring out more, so that amount that it's fading out is actually more. So it's a very subtle effect, and I actually really like this. This is probably what I'll end up keeping for this, but let's get crazy with it now. Let's add a spread. Let's add a 20 pixel spread. Okay, this is going to now increase the intensity by 20 pixels when you hover over. Okay, so it's crazy now. It's like, it's really bright. Why would you do that? Okay, so now let's make it even brighter and add a red on top of that. Okay, so let's bring this down, this spread down to say 5. Okay, so let's add a second border on. Well, I say border, but you know, box shadow. So we're going to comma, and I paste that whole line again because we need all these options. So 0, 0, we're going to leave that alone. We're going to leave our blur alone. We're going to keep that the way it is, but we're going to take, so I took this down to 5, remember? So I'm going to pull this up to 25 and make this red. So it's going to add both of these to it. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, so now it's just going absolutely crazy. It's that blue and then that red. It's ridiculous. It's good practice though to always in these kind of animations to actually have the same amongst the whole crew here and just say, okay, we want the intensity to be 0 in the beginning and then animate out. Okay, so it's just really good practice to get a good effect. Okay, and we want that blue. Okay, so now we've got some crazy animation. Great. Let's say we want that red to be a little less red. Okay, and let's make it more of maybe a white. Okay, so we'll do white, and we'll do white, and let's see what white looks like just for a second. And then we're going to want the white to be a little opacity. Okay, so there's our white. It's like glowing all its glory, and that blue needs to be more intense. So before I move on, let's just take that blue and take that intensity up to say 15, and that should be fine. So we're just going to intensify that blue. There we go. Now we got our blue and our white. So let's take that white and let's make it a little, let's make it opacity a little. I don't know what the word is for that. But so you can use RGBA colors instead of white. You could also use hex colors, but we're going to use RGBA. So to get a color that's a little, what's the word? Like translucent? Yeah. RGBA. Okay, and then you've got 255, 255, 255. That's white right there. And then the fourth parameter is going to be the opacity, which we'll do at say 0.4. So now we've got a white that's a little bit opacicized. There you go, opacicized. That's fine. So kind of a cool effect here. Now let's look at what inset does. Okay, inset needs to go first. So we're going to say we're going to take this guy and paste it in front. Okay, just like that. Except we're going to add the word inset. Remember, it didn't have to be there. Now we're going to do inset one. So we're going to do 0. Let's make the x and y in a little bit. So let's say 2 pixel by 2 pixel in. The 5 pixels is fine, and we're going to make this a green. Okay, it's going to be ugly. Green inside, and again, we need to make that the same throughout the whole thing here. Green, green, green. And so we want it to start at intensity 0 and then hop on up to say 15 green on the inset. Now I'm pretty sure you, well, let's take a look at what happens first before I say anything. Okay, so there we go. So now we've got our white, and we've got our green kind of on the inside. It's kind of stronger on these two than it is on this one here. Okay, and you see our blues going all together. Okay, so conclusion for that is if you're going to do an inset one, you can only have 2 borders. Okay, so let's knock off that third one so we can get a better view of our inset. So again, now we only have 2 borders. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, we've got our inset green one, then we've got our blue. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so now we've got our blue back, and there's our green as well. Again, our green is on that top left, and if we wanted that top left to be not top left, we would just take these down and say 0, 0, and again the px doesn't need to be there, and 0, 0, leave the 15, 0, 0, and 0. So now we're just going to have that green amongst the inside like that. So now we've got that green, and you're like, well, I want that to be really intense. So let's add some 50 pixel intensity, and this is just going to be ridiculous. So that's just, I don't even want to look at that for very long. But you know what? There you go. Now you've got, so you can do anything with these WebKit box shadows. You just need to get your mind into it, and you can do some really cool stuff.